the Strixes. I love the Strixes. A couple of weeks ago, we were at CES 2025, and I had showed you the full family of Strixes, and they were beautiful, and they were sexy. And today I have one. I have my very own ROG Strix B850-E Strix gaming Wi-Fi, which is kind of a big deal, because in a world where prices of motherboard went through the roof, the B850 powered motherboard, the budget, more friendly motherboard are kind of important. Now, don't get your hopes too high, because this particular ROG B850-E Strix will cost you about $350 before taxes. I don't really know how we call this. We can call this a budget motherboard. I don't know how ASUS thought that would work out, but to my great surprise, and to yours, well, it kind of works out. Now, starting with the obvious. Our ATX board has 8 PCB layers, so a robust base, which guarantees less components interferences and promotes VRM cooling, which is a very good start. The design remains Strix loyal, with a dark, aggressive and angular look. It's laser cut, it's pointy, and I like when things are pointy. I also like the more punk/funk underlines, the turquoise blues, the flashy pink, the big lettering. The RGB is classy, with a single backlidded ROG eye on the main VRM block. Nothing tacky. In addition, we have our usual RGB connectors. Definitely a more research, more dress, and a more invested design coming from ASUS. So yes, another very good point for ASUS here. Now, the board is powered by our usual AM5 CPU socket, which now provides a wide range of Ryzen CPU supports, always a plus, and most interestingly, by the brand new B850 chipset, which is totally confusing. It just is a new era for the B series. I'm not sure if I understood everything here. From what I see, the B850 chipset gives us as many PCIe 5.0 lanes than available on the X870 or X870 chipset. But the B850 is much cheaper. So why would you ever go to X870 powered motherboards? And I'm not going to complain about this, but one thing is certain. This year, or this season motherboards, is now all about B motherboards, not the X's. Now, VRM wise, well, we have a very powerful 1800 amps organized in a 16+2+2 configuration, 1440 amps of which is CPU centric. Now, clearly this is where ASUS is banking to partially motivate the rather heavy price tag of this motherboard, because this is not a budget size VRM. This is a proper premium monster, agile enough to face voltage variations and powerful enough to toy with some serious overclocking, because again, the B850 chipset is OC enabled. The two VRM cooling blocks are separated but bring a lot onto the table. They got our usual double contact design with premium and fresh thermal pads. The main block has a strong dense wall for heat storage, and the extended roof, despite being smaller than I expected, is incredibly heat resilient. The side block shows off sharp winglets to maximize heat transfers and is wider than on the previous B Strix iteration. The cooling results are absolutely second to none. After an hour long of synthetic stress test, we have a very homogeneous, non-saturated heat relief. After the 20-minute mark, the temperatures stayed in a very close range, pointing at a faster heat relief than what is harvested by the blocks, giving a rather good prospect on what you can do with this VRM in terms of overclocking, because we have plenty of temperature room that you can toy with, and obviously the overall lifespan of the product. Now, given the price and the standing of this board, I'm rating this VRM, or giving it a very good 8 out of 10 scoring, and I obviously would not want to see this being paired with anything less than an R7 class processor. Memory-wise, well, the board will support up to 192GB of DDR5 RAM with an 8,000 million transfers per second rating organized in a dual channel configuration, which is exactly what we had seen on the previous iteration of this board, the ROG Strix B850-E gaming Wi-Fi. But as it stands, it still is a lot of memory for a B series and much more than you'll ever need for any kind of gaming and even for a solid production build. But yeah, if you were looking for anything new in this field, pass your way, peasant. Staying in the memory, we have 5 M.2 solid-state drive connectors, 3 of which are PCIe 5.0 enabled against only 2 last year. So the PCIe 5.0 support is broadened or widened on this year model. Cooling-wise, well, obviously the star here is this one, the closest M.2 solid-state drive connector to the processor, which features this tall and dense cooling block. In addition, we have a double contact thermal padded treatment which show a real care, almost paranoiac great care for that stick. The other connectors also benefit from a large, thick thermal padded plate. Special mention for that one, which also gets a double thermal padding treatment, which is not that surprising since this is the one which will be trapped under the heat-bleeding GPU. I want to note the again redesigned and sturdy screwless NVMe locking mechanism. So far, and storage-wise, the Strix B850-E has nothing to envy from its more expensive X870E counterpart, and it's heavy, it's fast, it's cool all around. My only remark, bittersweet, is that on the main block we have this beautiful screwless latch mechanism, which by the way is very precise and sturdy, but for the rest, for the other M.2 solid-state drives, well, we have nothing but screws. More screws, always more screws, something I'd love to see go away next year. Expansion-wise, well, we keep a very fast 16 lanes at PCIe 5.0 standard for future-proofed GPU export, hence the metal dressing. So, if you compare this board to its predecessor, the B650-E Strix, you will see that we are losing the dual GPU at PCIe 5.0 support. And thank God for that, because to be frank, who would pair a B series, a motherboard which has RAM limitation, bandwidth limitation, and pair it with two 4,000 or 5,000 graphics cards, which cost thousands of dollars? No one. If you did want to have a dual GPU support, you would go obviously with X870E motherboard, not with this. So I'm happy to finally see some rational thinking instead of just pushing expensive specs that nobody would use onto the market. So I find this kind of refreshing. But pushing the comparison between the two boards, you might think we're also losing the GPU eject mechanism. Oh, that's a bad thing. Well, not so fast, because it has been replaced by a built-in trigger. Simply pull on the upper part of your GPU and it will freeze the GPU. Simple, easy, brilliant. And I think that this particular feature ends the couple of years we've seen amongst all the manufacturers of searching how to implement a simple, sturdy GPU eject system. Here, ASUS has ended the conversation, and this is what will remain and what will be bleeding through the industry over the next 12 months. Big ASUS kudos for this. Now, all this is really nice, all this is really beautiful, but now I need to dig into the ugly. PCIe bifurcation. Or bifurcation. And this board has a few. If you use any of these two PCIe 5.0 supplementary M.2 solid-state drives, you are dividing the GPU export bandwidth by 2. And if you use the PCIe 4.0 M.2 solid-state drive, the secondary export goes dead. But on the immensely bright side, it also means that you can use both a fully operational 16-lane at PCIe 5.0 standard GPU export along a fully operational PCIe 5.0 enabled M.2 connector. Only could we see this kind of bandwidth availability on X-level motherboards before. And this is incredibly exciting to see it now available on B850 motherboard. it is a big deal. Now, back IO-wise, well, we have our usual USB menu of plugs, but most noticeably, we got one USB 4.0 plug, which can transfer data up to a ludicrous 40 gigabit per second, and output video at DP 2.4 standard, bringing to 3 the number of integrated graphic plugs. Connectivity-wise, we are in heaven, since we got a 5 gigabit LAN, an updated and upgraded Wi-Fi 7 dual band adapter, which can now go up to a novel 6.5 gigabit per second. Finally, audio-wise, well, we got an extremely good all-digital ALC 4080 audio codec from Realtek, cleansed by a massive 500 microfarads worth of capacitors and insulated by an interference shield. But most importantly, it is perfection in terms of recording. Awesome for audio recording, so great for streamers of all sorts. Overall, we're dealing with an extremely well-equipped back I/O. It's about 30% less bandwidth that you will see on its X870-E counterpart, but still 140 gigabit per second worth of bandwidth is massive, and most importantly, the connectivity, the audio features of the board are identical. So yeah, big back I/O kudos to ASUS. Third one, front panel connector wise, well, we got the usual stuff, no supercharging port, a limited 10 gigabit Type-C, we are in the lower spectrum of the normal here. Cooling wise, we have 8 PWM fan connectors, including 1 water pump all-in-one. Again, nothing exciting for custom water cooling builders such as and maybe something which could be added in the next year iteration of this board, because again, when you're toying at the $400 or $350 mark without taxes, the custom water cooling stuff, I think it should be here. Finally, troubleshooting wise, well, here we are in the gold. Easy debugger, Q-code OLED screen for precise trouble identification, front power soldered button, CPU-less BIOS update button, clear CMOS button. We have it all, and I am happy, I am comfortable, I am taken care of. Now, in conclusion, the ROG Strix B850-E gaming Wi-Fi will cost you about $350 before taxes, or $150 cheaper than its X870-E Strix big sibling. And frankly talking, when you see what both bring on the table, I feel like the B850 might have better arguments. Sure, it doesn't have the same RAM support, it doesn't look as heavy and as dressed, but if I compare specs to specs, well, the Strix B850-E manages to do a lot of what its Strix 870-E more expensive counterpart can do. We got the same fundamentals in terms of PCB layering, export and storage bandwidth abilities, and for the rest, if you're looking for about the best gaming, robust / everything board for less than $400, well, there's simply nowhere else your money needs and wants to be.